And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Santa Fe.
John, it's time for another edition of Politicians Just Saying Things, whether they're true or not, because it's 2025 and it just doesn't matter. I was tuning in to the latest episode of Pamela Price's podcast.
She called me a crime boss.
As the recalled DA of Alameda County interviewed the recalled DA of San Francisco, Chesa Boudin, and listened to her intro.
Under Chesa Boudin's leadership as a San Francisco DA, both violent and nonviolent crimes fell by double digits in San Francisco.
Whoa, that's news to me. It's just anything goes at this point.
It does not matter. There were no riots. MacArthur Park is beautiful, and Chesa Boudin was the best DA San Francisco ever had since George Gascon.
I mean, if you're just going to say stuff, just go for the gold, I guess. 800-222-5222 is telephone number. 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. You can follow him on X at The Armed Liberal, the Armed Liberal himself, Mr. Marc Danziger. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, John. How are you?
I'm good, and I can't wait to get your take on this because you are a guy who is a California guy. You've lived here a very long time. You know Los Angeles backwards and forwards. And I want to play a clip for you that came from the state of South Carolina, where California Governor Gavin Newsom is not campaigning, wink, wink. He's just there to talk to people in diners and talk to politicians and South Carolina and meet with people and get in all the local papers for, California reasons. Here is what he had to say. No. But he was talking about what happened at MacArthur Park earlier this week, and here is what he said about that park.
Said, I've got to go. I said, what's going on, Mayor? She goes, well, something's going on in MacArthur Park. MacArthur Park is this beautiful park near downtown Los Angeles.
It's a beautiful park near downtown Los Angeles. Eric Swalwell tweeted something along the same lines yesterday where he talked about how that park is just, well, I'll read it for you directly. He said, MacArthur Park is not a war zone. It's a playground, a picnic spot, a community spot. But you wouldn't know that looking at it now. Why send armed agents to terrorize a community? They are flat out saying that there's no crime in that park, that there is nothing to worry about in that park. It's a park like the one you saw in Mary Poppins where people are having picnics and playing softball and kids are sliding down the slides, and it's very safe and very clean, and it's something that everyone can use without feeling like they're unsafe.
I'm speechless. So a couple things on that. One is I'm old enough that I actually used to go to MacArthur Park when it was that. And they have little paddle boats that you'd go around in, or rowboats, and you go around the little lake. And it was awesome. It was charming. It was amazing. I also believe incontrovertibly, without any possibility of debate, that Langer's has the best pastrami in North America. And I am a regular at Langer's, which is on the corner across from MacArthur Park. And I will tell you now that MacArthur Park was a disaster. That between homelessness, people selling drugs, people selling IDs, people selling God knows what, there's not a chance in the world it's a benign little park. Doesn't mean that no families ever took kids there because they didn't have a choice. But I'll point out that if I remember my news feed correctly from early this morning when I got up, they just picked up 2 bodies in the park yesterday. It had nothing to do with the raids or the police, but to do with the general level of, I'll use the word pleasantness that goes on there. And there's this inability to deal with reality that makes me nuts about what a lot of the modern Democratic Party does. And, there's crime and crime data, and we can talk about that if we have time. But more importantly, there's the denial of what people see with their own eyes. And if you were to show people photographs of MacArthur Park over the last 8 to 10 years, nobody, no sane person is going to go, this is a great park. And as a liberal, what really frosts my flakes is the fact that the people who live around the park are families of poor people, mostly Latino, who don't have access to recreation, who have small children, and who should have been able to use the park for the last 10 years as the kind of recreation that I got to use it as 50-some years ago. So how's that for an opener?
Well, you're 100% correct. And what happened to that park, and I mentioned this before, it's not like we got hit by a hurricane. It's not like we got bombed, like it's a war zone. The problems associated with that park are man-made, which means they're fixable. But you have to acknowledge that you have a problem if you're going to go in there and fix it. And what they're doing is they're just digging in their heels and saying, that's not true. Nothing like that is going on at that park. And for whatever reason, people believe them. Let's listen to LA Mayor Karen Bass earlier today about what happened in Los Angeles a couple weeks ago, where she's saying there was no rioting going on at all.
Well, let me just say that the quote-unquote riots that were reported never happened.
Which is the same line that Maxine Waters has been using. Never happened. No violence, no law breaking, nothing like that. Anyone who tells you that happened is lying to you.
I don't know what to say. I have publicly on your show said that I was kind of excited about Karen Bass as mayor. That I thought that she had the possibility of being a solid leader who would really turn the city around. And I was wrong. I'm going to eat some crow. Because, again, if you can't recognize fundamental truth, and it's reasonable to say, hey, the whole city didn't burn down. There was an area downtown where ICE was being active, and there was absolutely some conflict there, and we wish it hadn't happened. We've got some plans to deal with it better next time. We're working with both ICE and the community to figure out how to de-escalate this conflict. Right? That's the kind of things you would expect a thoughtful, kind of truth-driven mayor to say. Not like, yeah, look, I know what you're talking about. There was nothing happened down there. Those photographs you saw were all AI generated. It's all movie studio stuff. I don't know what to say. Like, I can't defend it.
Republicans in this state are outnumbered 2-1 by Democrats. So basically, them getting worked up over this doesn't matter. Nothing's going to change, especially in a city like Los Angeles, which is more heavily Democratic than California as a whole. Nothing is going to change until Democratic voters start getting offended at this sort of thing. Why is it that hasn't happened yet?
Well, I think there's two things, and I'm going to add something that I think you're missing. The Republican Party in California has become irrelevant in the last 20-some years because they jumped off a cliff of insanity. Right? The Republicans that I know who are sane and sensible and the kind of people I would trust to kind of lead something can't deal with the California Republican Party very much. Now, I know there's efforts to reform it. I'm not inside the Republican Party. I'm not a Republican. Don't know. But I will tell you that one of the pieces that has to happen is the Republican Party has to put on its big boy pants and has to act like a real grown-up political party and stop being a place where people who wear tinfoil hats want to congregate. Conversely, the problem in Democratic politics, and this is a problem nationally in politics, and probably, if I knew enough, it would be a problem internationally in politics, is that politics now is entirely tribal. And when I say tribal, it means that if somebody from my tribe says something and I know it's not true, I can't contradict them because when I am, I'm going to get thrown out of the tribe, and there's nothing in my life more important than being attached to the tribe. And until we can erase this trait in American politics, we're going to have a lot of problems at the local, state, and national level. We have to have people of every tribe who are willing to stand up and call things what they are and call balls and strikes.
We're speaking with Marc Danziger, the armed liberal, who you can follow on X at The Armed Liberal. Yesterday, a popular podcaster on the left came out and said that he did an interview right before the election with then Democratic nominee for president Kamala Harris. He said that the interview happened at the request of the DNC, at the request of the Harris campaign, and he thought it would be a good idea for her. He thought it would be a good idea for the podcast. Then the interview was conducted, and he said it went so far off the rails, the Harris team asked him not to publish the interview, and he agreed to not publish the interview, saying that had he done so, she was so awful in the interview that she would have lost the election because of it, and he didn't want to be blamed for it. Let's listen to him describe what happened.
He emailed me.
They emailed, like an email from the
DNC.
Okay.
And they said, hey, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are really interested in being on your show. I said, that sounds cool.
Okay.
I'll at least get to tell my daughter that I met the potential president of the United States.
Yeah.
And so I said yes, based on the fact that it would be a good story. And also they both had good takes.
What happened with Kamala?
Her take was really confusing and weird and not good. And so mutually agreed that we shouldn't publish it.
I see.
And I got lucky because I didn't want to be blamed for her losing.
Her take was that bad?
It was really, really bad, and it was like didn't make any sense. I can tell you, it was bacon as a spice. Bacon as a spice.
Bacon as a spice.
What do you think she said in that interview that was so far over the line that they couldn't publish it?
I'm sure the same thing she says in all the other interviews she does. Something sort of vapid and non-responsive that doesn't demonstrate kind of mastery of the topic. And again, let me make a qualification that's really important. She is, like most people who operate at that level, way, way up like the smart and articulate curve compared to the average person in America or the world. The problem is that when you play at that level, you're playing at the NBA or the WNBA. And being kind of bright and articulate doesn't cut it. You need to have real grasp of issues. You need to have a real ability to formulate a narrative and to formulate a vision and to sell that narrative and that vision to the people who are listening to you. And she just doesn't have it. She's never had it. You've heard me on this show talk about that. And what a disastrous choice Biden made, and conversely, what a disastrous choice the Democratic Party made in choosing her. And I think that, I would love to see that thing get released because ideally it'll put, a lock on the door and she won't get to run for governor of California and make things worse here than Gavin has made them, which may or may not be possible. But look, what you expect to hear from a politician is, I have a vision of the world. I have a vision of where we are. I have an idea of how we can get from where we are to this vision of where I want us to be. And that's the fundamental narrative in all politics. And it could be a slightly wacky one, like somebody running for the mayor of New York, but it's a vision, and it's coherent, and it makes sense, and he can express it. Harris has never shown the ability to do that. She's also never shown a conviction, and hopefully, I'm not trying to hurt her feelings because I'm judging her against the best people in the world at this, but she's also never shown the ability to master a subject well enough to be able to clearly articulate, here's underlying structure, and I'm going to show you where it is and what to do. Everything she does is tactical. Everything she does is transactional. And everything that I've seen her do is aimed at getting the next office or staying in office.
When you look at what happened in that interview and how she performed as a candidate, she is allegedly interested in federal subjects. That's something that she cares about. It's something that she has thought about. It's something that she has ideas on. She's never shown any of those same interests in anything California related. Certainly not with the California budget, not with our insurance crisis, not even, as the former Attorney General of California, she wouldn't even reveal how she voted on Prop 36. when she was the Attorney General, when Prop 47 and Prop 57 were voted in by voters in statewide propositions. So if she's interested in federal subjects and she was bad as a candidate for that office, can you imagine what kind of candidate she's going to be if she runs for an office that she really doesn't want and she has to deal with subjects that she really fundamentally doesn't care about?
Well, she's going to be terrible. But going back to my original comment, if the Republicans want to nominate somebody who's a dingbat, or there isn't a concerted effort on the part of the media to do their job and to kind of hold her up to the light, she's going to probably win.
And then the Democratic Party is going to have to deal with the fact that she will be the sitting governor of California, the former Democratic nominee for president, and she's going to want it again.
Well, yeah, there's a point where Democrats, and again, I'm speaking as a Democrat, we have to be held accountable for the outcomes of our work and what we've done. Like, one of the things I did professionally is I got people to be engaged in the idea of, I don't care what work you did, I care what the outcome of what you did was, what happened because you did this work. And, you know, looking at Democratic-led states and Democratic-led cities, and particularly progressive Democratic-led states and cities, because there's a couple of pretty well-run, you know, moderate Democratic states and cities. I want to put a call out into the mayor of San Jose, who's showing amazing levels of sanity for a California politician. But, you know, they're not doing a great job. These cities are all in trouble. And when I say in trouble, I'm talking about people voting with their feet. I'm talking about levels of crime. I'm talking about levels of fiscal disaster, which make it impossible for cities to invest in things like keeping water flowing and treating sewage and making sure there's power and making sure there's policing and fire protection and all the things that cities are supposed to do. And we as Democrats, and that we is getting stretched pretty darn thin these days, we as Democrats have to step up and demonstrate that the democratic model of governance can work. We have to show that we can run cities and that we can do the things that we say are important. We can help homeless people. We can improve the environmental impact of cities. We can provide housing at an affordable price. We can make sure there are jobs in our city so people can work and pay for their housing. We have to show that we can do those things. And so far, I gotta say, as a fan of the team, we haven't had a good season. We haven't had a good season for a bunch of years.
Marc Danziger, the Armed Liberal. You can follow him on X at The Armed Liberal. Marc, thanks so much for stopping by. Always a pleasure.
Happy to be here always. You take care, John.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, we're now on the air on the weekends in Fresno.
Every Saturday from 2 to 3, catch the Fix California Hour with John Phillips and Randy Wang on KMJ in Fresno, AM 580, 105.9 FM, and streaming at kmjnow.com.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Well, let's do that right now. 790 KABC welcomes X and Los Lobos at the Pacific Amphitheater at the OC Fair on August 3rd. It's all part of the Toyota Summer Concert Series. Tickets are on sale now at packamp.com, but right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-795-2222. Get spare tickets to the show. All concert tickets include admission to the OC Fair. Tickets furnished by the Pacific Amphitheater. Good luck dialing.
Gavin Newsom says MacArthur Park is a beautiful place.
MacArthur Park is this beautiful park here downtown Los Angeles.
What say you at 800-222-5222? Let's begin with Tim in Culver City. Tim, hello.
Hey, good afternoon, guys. I'm going to shoot a couple of things at you real quick, wrapped in my memory, my experience with MacArthur Park. One of these days, they're going to come get me because I troll Bass and Newsom on quite a bit on X. You know, nothing threatening, just calling them on BS with their alternative facts, with some, facts that are on record that it proves them wrong. And my experience at MacArthur Park it was about 2013, something like that, when they started having a spate of concerts at night there at the stage, and kind of like they did later at that park in downtown near the jewelry district. But of all people, I saw Robin Ford, legendary blues guitarist, play there. It was an intimate show on the stage, and I thought, I don't care what's happening, I'm going to go see him close up like this. And it was really nice. Nothing happened. There was no threat around then, even that recently, which was, 12 years ago, 13 years ago maybe. And, I'm sure it was probably still dangerous to go walking through there at night, but there was a big group of people, so it was pretty cool. And, we moved back here to L.A. We were living in Oregon while my kids were in school up there at U of O in Eugene. And, we came back right around the time Biden was elected after my kids finished school. And to tell you the truth, it was getting pretty much the same as Portland on a smaller scale. And, but you never get tired of seeing deer walking through your front yard, I'll tell you that. But I came back here. This is our home. I was born here. I was raised here, and I'm not leaving. And to quote a guy a podcaster, I won't say his name, and radio personality, and I'm doing everything I can. It's just been recently, like listening to you guys and John and Ken, that, I turned around, did a 180 and became, changed my voter status and so forth. But to quote that guy, I won't mention his name, I don't know what's going to happen, but if you people want to fight, you better believe you've got one. And I think I'm looking for a serious person like Terrell or maybe Larry Elder, who's a lawyer. Why don't we put a lockbox on our taxes until they do what they're supposed to do, what they've been sworn to do as elected officials?
Well, I'll tell you this. Nothing is going to change until we start voting differently. If we don't start voting differently, we're going to get stuck with the same people who wreck the town and wreck the state and have no interest in changing what they're doing, because from their point of view, they get elected, they get reelected, what they're doing is working, so why would you change? They're not going to change their minds. You have to change the people in charge. Thank you for the call, sir. I appreciate it. Let's go to Max in Tijuana. Max, hello.
You just made my point, but it's a very good point. I've heard a lot of whining. I have nothing but empathy for all these people and the business owners, but you keep voting these people in. As Carlin said, George Carlin, garbage in, garbage out. Why don't we just have a Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass action figures, and they come in a box, and it's called Calcutta instead of MacArthur Park, and you can stick pins in them. But you stupid people have to stop voting these people in. If you can vote in Trump, capture the Senate and House and the Supreme Court, you can get rid of these people. We did it in San Francisco, and I thought San Francisco was the feces capital. Anyway, thank you for letting me vent.
All right. Thank you for the call, sir. I appreciate it. Let's go to Larry in Hayward. Larry, hello.
Hi. I'd like to see us quit using the word homeless. These are not homeless people. They have a home. We may not like their home, but what they are is bums, tramps, hobos, drug addicts, criminals, and things like that. But if we keep patronizing this homeless thing, they're not homeless. Where you slept last night was your home. If that's what you're picking to sleep in, that's your choice. There's opportunity out there. If we want to build some small, tiny houses for them, think of it like a place where there's a lock on the door and a toilet and a sink and a bed. And if they want to stay there for a few nights, that's fine. We could call it a prison, and maybe they'd get used to it. Maybe they'd live there. But we keep calling them homeless and make it sad. And there's people down on their luck, and we'll help them. But these other people have made a home in someone's park and backyard, and it's not right. The laws are there to pull them out and put them in a place where they belong. Call it a jail, call it whatever. But at least they're safe. They're off the street. They have a toilet. And stop calling, and when people call them homeless, correct the people. They're not homeless. They've been that way for years, months, weeks, or whatever. But I'm sick and tired of them being called homeless. They live in California, and that's their home. They live in San Francisco, L.A., that's their home. They're not homeless. They're bums. They're vagrants. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the call, sir. And frequently, one of the things that we've learned is that through Project Inside Safe, which is Karen Bass's signature program, where they want to provide housing for people who are living on the streets, they will give them a unit. They will give them an apartment or a motel room or access to a homeless shelter, fill in the blank. They'll give them some form of housing, and they will take that housing, and they'll keep some of their stuff there, but they spend their time in the encampments because that's where the drug trade is. That's where all the fun is to be had. That's where their buddies are. So even if you give them a unit, that's not taking them off the streets because the streets that's their social network, and that's where they want to be. Thank you for the call, Sarah. All right, let's go to Rose in Marina. Rose, hello.
Oh, hey, guys. I've been on the phone so long. I have so many things to say, but I know you're super busy. But, I don't think that Gavin, the biggest liar in the food chain, understands it's a pretty small world because yesterday I got a text from my best friend who moved from California to guess where? South Carolina. Because of Gavin Newsom and the rest of these people that run this state. And she said to me, Rose, that lying sack of blank is in South Carolina trying to tell us how beautiful MacArthur Park is. That's the park where all of the illegal injured workers we had to deal with get their fake Social Security numbers. And I said, bingo. And here's the thing. That has been going on for so long, guys. LAPD knows. Everyone knows the people that illegal Social Security numbers there. And when the second layer in the food chain, Karen Bass, said that they are on top of what's going on in the park, they're not on top of what goes on regarding that. Because you can Google this. Google how to get a fake Social Security card in LA. And what comes up is MacArthur Park. And you can see stories written by even the New York Times as to how LAPD only had 2 officers working on that. And they need 25 officers working on it. It's such a huge problem. So, this whole thing, I pray, is going to implode on these people, but not if you elect the likes of Eunice Hernandez, because she knows what goes on there. It's her district. She knows that those vendors throw the grease in the alley that the poor Mr. Langer has to deal with his company. She knows all of those things that are being sold there are stolen. So you're right. It's not going to change if you put someone like her in office, because this is her thing. That area is her thing. She has no problem with illegal Social Security cards, numbers, no problem with illegal vendors, no problem with illegal anything going on down there. And she's just protecting her own kind because that is, in fact, her ancestors. And it's a very super level problem that's been going on forever. And I've been in the weeds on it. I will tell you that you can get a person under oath that says, where did you get this Social Security card when they're asked? And they tell you, MacArthur Park. And you say, is this the only card number you've ever used? And they will tell you, no. I've used several numbers. And then you take that to a workers' comp judge and you put that person under oath and they say the same thing. The judge says, I don't care if they're illegal. They're working and they're injured. And that's all the labor code in California cares about. So this thing is just not as simple as people want to look at it. It's been going on, and it has been accepted by every layer in this state. And it's the reason people don't live there anymore, including my best buddy. So thanks for letting me explain all of that. I love your show. I love listening to you guys. And I've been on hold from Manhattan Beach to the marina and back to Manhattan Beach. And I still stay on hold because I want
That's dedication.
to talk to you wonderful guys. And Randy, this is Rose. Randy, you better not come back from New Mexico. I hope the moving truck is on. It's the U-Haul. It's on its way to New Mexico.
All right. Well, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Yeah, she had been on hold a long time, but at least she was driving from one pretty place to another pretty place. Although, if Gavin Newsom regards MacArthur Park as beautiful, I don't know what he would say about the South Bay.
She was going from Manhattan Beach to Marina del Rey and back. That's like 10 miles, and it took her an hour and a half.
Yeah, well, MacArthur Park is beautiful. That's heaven. All right, let's go to Joseph in Culver City. Joseph, hello.
Howdy. How you doing?
Good.
Yep, I am a 44-year-old soy Mexicano. Grew up, out here in Culver. But I'm calling because I'm very politically charged these days, like a lot of people. Although I actually do some really deep digging into a lot of our elected officials, and not too many people know about Karen Bass's history. She made many trips. I think it was about 8 trips to go visit Castro in her younger days. The organization she was working with was a socialist organization. These people don't share our values. They don't respect our structure of government. I think they have a more nefarious plan. I see. You remember the Red Scare back in the day?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think I know we're experiencing that more today, which I see lots of Marxism coming from different elected officials and media apparatus. And so most people don't even understand what Marxism is. It's just a tool meant to topple a capitalist state. It's meant to create revolution. It creates an oppressed class with an oppressor, but this has to be done through the means of propaganda. Marx taught that he wanted to help people realize their oppression. And so when I see them saying we need to fight and we're not going to stand up for this, and they're completely discarding the laws that our elected officials put in before us, and there is a diplomatic way to change those laws. And it seems that the things that they say, the rhetoric, it is said on purpose to upset people. And then you see propaganda and them taking half-truths to piss off the masses. And I think that most people need to wake up what's going on in our country. We have certain elected officials that have infiltrated.
Well, she looks like a businesswoman and she talks like a kindergarten teacher. So just from the point of view of appearance, she looks like a moderate, professional, sane person. But her political history and her political socialization is exactly as you described. She is a political extremist. That's the world that she comes from. She's smart enough to know that that doesn't sell well to the masses, so you have to moderate it to one degree or another to obtain power and to stay in power. And that's exactly what she did. But I don't think she has a problem with what we saw happen in the streets of downtown Los Angeles. I'm sure she supported what they were doing. And she was put in a position where she's the leader of the city, so she's technically supposed to look out for law and order and the protection of public property and those sorts of things. But her heart was definitely with the people who were marching in the city and burning things down. Let's go to Jane in Venice. Jane, hello.
Hey there, how's it going?
Good.
Good. I just want to tell you my story. I moved here in 1989 because everybody wanted a British nanny at the time. They all thought they were going to get some kind of Mary Poppins. So I moved out here. It wasn't for me. It wasn't the nannying type. So I got a job in Robinson's May. And I worked there for about 6 months. And then one day this lady said to me, I need to see your green card. And I was like, what do I do? So I asked somebody else that worked there who was also British. And they said, just go to MacArthur Park, take $50, take a passport photo. So I did all that. We went and sat in this little cafe. This guy ran off. And he came back and brought me a green card and a social security card. So it's been going on. I've got a real one now, but it's been going on for a really, really, really long time. That was like 30 years ago.
Oh yeah, no, and they upgrade or they update their documents given what's going on. So when during the whole COVID thing, you could buy one of those vaccine cards over in MacArthur Park as well if your employer required proof of vaccination.
Oh, you could just print that off the internet. That's all I did with that thing. But yeah, so everything was simple. There was no computers. That was before 9/11. So every year they kept changing the green cards, so they couldn't fake it or forge it, which just made it easier for the forgers because no employee really knew what it looked like. There was you couldn't look online and see what it really looked like. But yeah, I got away with that for about 10 years until I got my stuff together and got my real paperwork.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you. Thanks for the call, Jane. That's going to do it for us today, but we'll be back tomorrow at noon for another edition of The John Phillips Show.